Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And this is...
Who's Coffee Talk here at UnSpun.
I threw you a curveball because I didn't say it's time for. I said, and this is because, you got your coffee? I got my coffee.
Coffee? With a picture of me, actually, here's me. I don't know if you can see this. If you're watching this, this is a ride. This is the Tower of Terror in in Disneyland a little while ago. And here's I don't know if you can see this. Here's me.
I can see.
My family made a cup of it because it was a picture of me. And this is as the ride's flying down, and I'm literally like sitting there.
You look like you're just sitting there having a smoke.
Just hanging. Everyone else is like, ah! Yeah, I push all my feelings down, Jody. I just push them down.
Nothing rattles you though, George. I think that's pretty. So, okay, let's reference why on today's 156th episode of UnSpun podcast with George Affleck and Jody Vance, found on theorca.ca.
Let's say it's Vancouver's longest lasting podcast, maybe. Or most, I don't know. Is it?
Let's just start saying that. Let's just start.
4 years in the making.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, yes.
And they said we'd never last, George. Here we are. You know what I'm hoping doesn't last, though? Like, legitimately, I'm hoping doesn't last?
What's that?
This stupid coffee cup thing. When you said, let's have coffee, let's talk. Can you please explain to me the brain trust at work here? With all due respect to all the hardworking people at City Hall, because there are hardworking people there. But I'm going to sound really pissed off about this. Whose idea was it to implement adding fees to an already overmaxed, taxed, affordability crisis riddled, pandemic weary, whose idea was this?
This was this council's idea. They put a motion forward when they first got elected in 2018 to create a bag tax and a cup tax. And, basically they wanted to get cups and bags out of the garbage stream. And this had come up several times when I was in office, and staff always said it doesn't work that way. We have to rely on the province's recycling program. It's very robust. It's usually a carrot versus stick approach. You get a bottle of pop. You pay 10, 25 cents or whatever it is now, and then you return it, you get your 25 cents back. It's incentive based. It works. And the manufacturers and the makers of these things all work together with the system. That's why it works. One of the most successful recycling programs in the world in this province, and private kind of process basis. It's based on a market economy concept. In this case, this council wanted to get rid of these plastic bags, and they wanted people to pay for coffee cups. And so staff were forced to go and come back with a report. They came back with a report. They approved that report. Then they came back with an implementation plan. But in that time, COVID started to happen. And so they came back and said, you guys should probably, delay this. It was supposed to start last year, I think last January. And they delayed it a year to this January. We're still in COVID land. They could have, and I think staff would have completely agreed with them that, let's delay this. It's something that staff didn't really want because they knew the show that we would that we're seeing would happen. And it's because the whole thing is nonsense. So the reason we're talking about this, of course, is because Councillor Rebecca Bly put a motion on the floor to kind of take a step back, or let's look at what's going on with this and maybe make some changes to it. It wasn't really a hardcore, stop this, because she wouldn't have the support of the majority of council, because the majority of the council support this concept. And you can see them out there defending it every day. Because the challenge here is it's not revenue neutral. So you go some coffee stores, as an example, will sell you. They've reduced. I think Tim Hortons actually reduced the cup of coffee, and then they added the coffee cup cost onto it. So the cup of coffee is the same price. And so some places are doing this, some aren't. I don't think McDonald's
because they keep the money. They keep the money.
The city's not even benefiting from this.
That's the part that blows my mind, right? And then it ultimately, when you think about it, because you and I bring our own cup. What's a quarter? No big deal. Whatever. You can't bring your own reusable cup in because of COVID. So that's a little bit of a,
you can't get a Diet Coke at McDonald's and you bring your own cup. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
You already got to deal with a stupid paper straw. Now you got to bring your own stupid cup to McDonald's. Give me a break. What a ridiculous concept.
Think about the people who don't have the option of a reusable anything, and you just added cost to the most vulnerable. Like that's the part
That's
that it's
yes.
just like,
Gene Swanson seemed to be oblivious to that. Who's the champion of the
yeah,
underdog, the most needful people in the city. So I mean, and again, before we get attacked by people saying, "Oh, you hate the environment," I mean, there are just better ways to do this, and you have
right.
to. And what is the role of a city? And recycling is a provincially mandated program. And if the city wanted to say there's a better way, or we should be looking at this, and what is the math on this, and what impact does this have on GHGs, greenhouse gas emissions, and all that kind of stuff should be built into it. If what are the priorities that we should be focusing on? Is the removal of a paper cup, or forcing us to, when you go to Shoppers Drug Mart, to get a paper bag for 25 cents now because you
Yeah,
forgot to bring a bag, which is fine. You get
always.
punished, or you could have just charged for a, biodegradable plastic bag, which is much. I went to Shoppers. I forgot my bag. I had to get a paper bag last night. I literally have walking down the street with a stupid paper bag, falling apart as I walked. Of course, because if anybody who grew up in the 70s who had
We
paper
know.
bags, and
Remember
your
those
dad
groceries?
and mom would say, "Go to the car and get the groceries," and you go there and you'd be walking up the stairs to your house.
And
You're
the
like,
oranges would dump out the
go to
bottom.
the
Yeah, yeah.
bottom. I mean, the
Oh yeah.
comedies, routines are endless, and so we solve that problem with plastic bags, and we even have plastic bags that biodegrade. But oh God, no, we can't have those. And now I'm literally, I was at Home Depot the other day, and I was buying some plastic bags, and the shelves were almost empty because I need plastic bags now to put my garbage in. And guess who's in the lineup at Home Depot? Mike Weeb's there, City Councilor Mike Weeb,
Oh, what was
and
he
he's like, "Hey."
buying?
I don't know. He said, "Hey,
I'm kidding.
hey
I'm
George,
kidding.
what?" No, because here's what happened. He said, "Hey George, what are you doing? What are you doing here?" Hey, I said, "I'm buying plastic bags." And he laughed, and he looked over at and I saw oh my God, you are? I said, "Yeah, because of your stupid bylaw. I mean, look
Yeah.
at the shelves." So it's ridiculous, and it's not thought through, and it's back. It's just
It's
working
not going to
against
save the
them.
environment. It's not going to save the environment. It's not.
No,
It's not going to
and
stop people from using cups. It's not going
mhm,
to save the environment. We look around in other jurisdictions, and this is the part that really burns me, is being a born and raised Vancouverite, like living in the city of Vancouver and having family who live outside of the downtown core, who do not live in the city of Vancouver, but live in Tawasin or South Surrey Delta, White Rock, Port Coquitlam, Coquitlam. I have family sprinkled all over the lower mainland and Metro Vancouver and
mhm.
beyond. And there are things that happen within the city limits here that are just mind-boggling to me. That there are that within the chambers, within the council chambers, the mindset is that if we make this change here, it will change everything. And it really won't.
Well,
It
yeah.
really won't.
Yes and no. I mean, I kind of agree. I mean, I think you can be doing things that are, they can be good ideas that can be implemented. I mean, sprinklers, for example, in Vancouver, unique to Vancouver, required because of the charter. But if you're looking at things like a cup program, when you have a program that's really well established, you know that you can
You're
take
talking
your
about
milk
sprinklers inside
homes.
buildings and
Yes, that's a
right.
Vancouver
So okay,
charter thing. So,
if
but
there's a
just for
public, but if you can tell me that 25 cents a cup is a public safety issue,
yes,
let's have that debate
or
because
that
I
it's going
can
to
I can
result
see
in this fewer GHGs or something.
totally, but I
Yes,
can see any rational person can see a very direct and straight line, logically speaking, from the requirement of sprinklers
yes,
inside buildings directly
saves lives.
impacting exactly life saving. So let's move to housing. Let's because
Well, just
boy,
one more thing. I just want to point out one
okay.
more thing about the cup thing because it's a good
Okay.
example, just to
Okay.
show
Let
you
me take a
why
sip of my coffee while you do that.
yes. Did you know you can take milk cartons back now to the recycling depot, right? So
All types
why
of milk,
can't
almond milk, cashew
exactly
milk, all the milks.
so why not cups? Why can't if they're going to charge me 10 cents for a cup, imagine
Oh
the
yeah.
homeless people who are out there, the binners, if
Yeah,
they were cups are easily stackable, you could take back 500 cups, and drop them
totally.
off, and then you get your 500 cups at 5 cents each. That's good cash, but that doesn't exist, and so that's what the
It
city
should.
should have been fighting for and saying, how do we make the provincial government, Recycle BC, look at this as an opportunity? And when the mayor was elected and he said he's going to be the chief lobbyist, that's what you should be doing. Hey, NDP government, who says they love the environment, here's an idea. Why don't you make Recycle BC force recycling of cups at these groceries or at these things. And I mean, it does.
I
The
think that's a
thinking is just
fantastic
madness.
idea. So that is something that I could absolutely get behind, because that, George Affleck, is logic.
It's called the
Logic
carrot
being,
principle.
it is, and I'm all about those carrots. I'm not sure if you
Yes.
saw that. We'll get to my column in a bit, because it's like
Yes.
carrots are a thing. But
But
let's
you're
talk
going to talk about
about.
the charter.
I do want to talk about the Vancouver Charter. First, I want to talk about home. Okay,
Yeah, I mean
so there's
they're
been this
interconnected. Yeah.
splashy, like, I don't know, I got the press release from the City of Vancouver, and a few minutes later I got it from Team Kennedy-Stewart. So I feel like they're all using
What?
the 43 communications people are also working on the mayor's campaign.
Bing.
Cheers. Cheers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm reading it,
Vodka.
and it's so good. Tequila. But you and I are, people must know that we talk all the time. So I'm like forwarding you this. I'm like, how is
Yes.
this new? Like, how is this new? I can see why it's election time. So now's
Mm-hmm.
when I'm going to tell you that gentle density is a really good idea, and loosening up the restrictions on permitting, and allow what you're allowed to build and where and why. And it's so crazy. You and I have talked so much about what used to exist in Vancouver with regard to affordable rentals. Like, there was a part of my life where
Mm-hmm.
I knew when I'd go and look at a rental, almost what kind of building I was walking into, almost down to the layout. I'd know what kind of parquet floors. Would the bathroom be avocado? Would they be pink? Would it be, because it was never fancy, right? It
Avocado.
was, remember the
Nice.
avocado green fridge? Do you remember
Oof.
the old
Yes.
days? Or yes. So,
Brown.
I mean, and parquet floors and really simple windows with a latch on, whatever. The buildings were
Yes.
very rudimentary, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Safe, clean, affordable. I loved
Mm-hmm.
it. I loved all of those rentals. And now those have all been, by and large, either renovated to the point of being now a multi-million-dollar unit, or have gone by the wayside. And there are no more being built. Like, there used to be, you used to walk through Kitsilano and you'd go by, 2-story walk-ups with two buildings or a building on either side, and in the middle there'd be a
Mm-hmm.
courtyard that would just be filled with kids' toys and kids running around. It was like the neighborhood happened in the middle, like between, and that just doesn't exist in our reality. It's not being built in our reality now. Do you think home is going to help with that?
Well, it's interesting, and the charter is, for those who don't know, Vancouver has its own charter. So we don't have to follow the same regulations as other cities across the province. We have our own little independent creation of creating bylaws, and we don't have to get approval from it's a whole different game, and it gives us a lot of power. But also, it can be good, it can be bad, but it also creates a lot of bureaucracy potentially, because we create adding. And so it's very frustrating. And Sam Sullivan, I know for years, has been, talked a lot about the province needs to come in and change our charter, force us to change our charter, and maybe the other provincial regulations, related to public hearings, for example, that they're broken, they don't work, that there needs to be a different process for public hearings. And there's no appetite for the city council in Vancouver to change the charter to do that, because it'll be a nightmare to change it, because people will be so mad, because you say we're going to change the way the public hearing process goes. And to a lot of people that will appear like there's less public engagement, when in fact, there should be the community planning process, whether it's the Vancouver plan or the local community planning process, should. So when you have zoning for a neighborhood, that should then be the zoning for the neighborhood, and there shouldn't be a need for public hearings all the time about every single building that you want to build. And this whole
Because it's already been
spot.
done when it was planned,
Yes.
because there was public consultation at the planning level.
Exactly.
And the over, like, but then therein lies I don't want a building in my Shaughnessy neighborhood. We only do big houses up here. We're going to keep this. You're going to ruin the community. And this home, going back to the home thing, because I actually, at the root of it, support the idea behind, taking the single family dwelling neighborhood and adding that gentle density. Like, if you're going to try and shoehorn in a 10-story building into a neighborhood that's just one massive house next to one massive house,
yes.
right?
You live in a neighborhood that there's, for example, Kits and some of the areas along that area below Broadway went through a planning process 40 years ago 35 years, I don't know, the early 80s.
Yeah.
And the community plan was basically the ability to take a home and turn it into multiple units. If you've ever been to Kits, you'll see these houses, they look like a house, but behind it is like 6, 8 units, and they're
Yeah.
strata quite often. And this was a unique process. And the plan, I believe, was to actually do upper Kits, the 12th and or if Broadway and
Broadway and above. Yeah.
never happened. The challenge with the mayor's this motion and the way vision operated, and this was what I always fought against, is that and I 100% was all talked a lot about gentle density, that you can create these kind of zones, but you have to have a process to get there. And to say this is going to be a citywide policy just creates a nightmare of people
nightmare.
Yeah, of people just going, you're not going to listen to us. And instead of, as I've said many times in the show, and as I said, the community, we actually had, and this was created in the 60s, and there's a whole story behind it that Sam Sullivan actually has done on his podcast, his little videos that he creates. But, we are in the world we live in where we have this community planning process, which can work really well if you end up with what you have in your neighborhood, or that whole area of Kits in the lower under Broadway area, where you have these massive density that you can't even see. Or you look at the West End, where they went through a process. Back now, the people hate changing the West End, but you see all these towers that replaced houses. That was the decision that was made back then. Or you look at decisions that I was on when I was on council that we made, the Cambie Street, Lower Cambie, which now is, you see massive density built there, that it was approved by the community at a city process. There's not been one local community plan now done in 3 years, because they've stopped doing them, doing the citywide plan. It's impossible. It's a monster. It's not going to do what it's going to do. So what you think about the neighborhoods, Fraser, you think about Dunbar, you think about, even further east, Hastings, there's multiple neighborhoods you could look and say, this probably the Kits model, the lower Kits model would work really well in these areas, where you empower the neighborhood to go through a process, make a decision on what the design principles would be, how the planning approval process would be. Maybe it's only the people on your street need to say yes or no to this design, not the whole neighborhood. Why would I care what's happening 3 blocks from my house? If the neighborhood is okay with it, then I'm okay with it. But we don't have that. There's no process anymore. And of course, the issue of getting stuff built is a nightmare. And that's where the charter and, regulations relating to
the charter makes me crazy. The charter makes me crazy.
Well, it's the bylaws and all these things that come with the charter that we've created a monster of process. There was a tweet this morning. I was going back and forth with Francis Beulah and Jack King, who's quite prolific on, and he's written a book about the planning process and this whole supply and demand. And I was saying supply and demand is like a dirty words in politics. And Francis is like, really? And Francis Beulah, who's with the Globe and Mail, and she said, really? I said, yes. If you're a politician, you say supply and demand, they immediately think you're a capitalist pig. How dare you? And the problem is that the concept is because, and this is what Colleen Hardwick's always arguing. Well, we've already approved all the homes we need in this city. We should just stop and stop planning. But the thing is, you don't count a unit until it's actually available in the market. What's happened is there's an approval process, and then there's a building process, and there's this giant void in between. And so we're not building to this pace that we need. Supply, oh my God, the supply word. But you can't count supply until it's there. And therefore there's a disconnect. And so you could keep approving till you're blue in the face. But if you don't build anything, it doesn't matter. And that's the challenge that this council doesn't seem to understand. They kind of talk about speeding up processes, but now the mayor is going to throw this idea, which is an interesting idea. And actually Vision put a very similar idea together right before the last election.
Interesting.
How'd that work out for them?
But that's a unspun thing. Like these ideas, my air quotes are up, and we see way too much ribbon cutting and not enough red tape cutting. Right? It's that big void in between that you were referencing there, George, between the approval and the actual completion of build and availability to the starved citizen looking for the place to hang their hat. In between is so much red tape. And it's all, every time I ask why does that? Because I really honestly want to know why. Because once we figure out the why, we can figure out what needs to change in order to fix the why. So the Vancouver charter that's unique to Vancouver, it's like the park board unique to Vancouver. All of these things that are unique to Vancouver have it stunted in a way that is absolutely devolving what was such a vibrant place, an award-winningly beautiful place. And for the citizens of Vancouver who are looking around and seeing the highest of high-end stuff being built, and quickly, I might add, where the money is. It's happening fast. but it's the smaller pieces of the puzzle,
Yes.
that supply part, that is like, why can't we just
Because
find the
homeowners are
motivation? Like,
protectionists. Single family homeowners are protectionists, and you see that on this council. You see that the people who have these single family homes. They don't want. There's this weird
and they vote.
and they vote. And so
That's the
you have
part.
Colleen Hardwick feeding into that, who really seems to not want any more development of single family homes, and that we have enough supply, and therefore that's already been approved. We just need to build it, which
We
is
don't.
sort of true. But
Right, but
while
let's
we're
get
waiting for
building.
that,
So what's the start? What's the holdup, George? Is it the
yes,
permitting
yes,
processes?
yes,
Is it the, like, all of a sudden now, if you want to build anything, you have 9 million hoops to jump through, and it's going to cost a bloody
yes.
fortune. You're going to wait 3 years to get it built
I had a
or
call
get the
from
permit.
I had a call yesterday from one of our. I don't think I won't name him, but he's very prolific, and
He's
because I
watching
don't know
right
if
now. He's listening right now.
he's here.
He's
I'm
listening
not
right
sure
now.
if but he's trying to build a deck in the back of his house, and he called me.
Let's just call him Dave.
Let's call him Dave. And on his back, he's trying to build this deck on his back of his house. He lives up in like east of Vancouver somewhere. It's not very complicated, just a deck. But it's been months and months and months, and he keeps going back. And if one time they're asking, well, you need to do the issue related to water and sewer into the street. He's like, water and what? Like,
For your
what does that have to
deck?
do with my deck? It's just a deck. It's like four pillars in a deck. It's a deck. There's no water to it. And then they're like, oh, but it's going to cost you this much. Therefore, the fees are this much. He said, well, if I reduce it by $5,000, my fees will be less. Yes. Well, okay. Then I'm reducing the cost of it by $5,000. I mean, it goes back and forth and back and forth. He just wants to build a deck.
Just let him
Just so
build
we
a
can have a
deck.
nice summer. And it's probably not going to get built by summer because of this. And this is a deck. So imagine if you wanted to build a place that a lot of people, these places you see in lower kits, these houses that were converted into, you cannot do that. It's so impossible. And that's why a lot
Impossible.
of developers are like, ugh, you gotta comply with this thickness of the walls and the noise issues and ventilation and this and that and this and that. And it's just like, you know what? No thanks. Bye. I'm going to go do
Yeah.
something else in Port Coquitlam with Brad West because I'll get it done.
Because they can get it up in minutes, comparatively speaking.
Right.
What's interesting, maybe there needs to be, and again, this is a Jody Vance pie in the sky idea, but maybe there needs to be incentives rather, again, the carrot over the stick,
Oh, yes.
incentives for people to do what my friends did here in lower kits, as it were. They bought a big old character home that was not big enough for their purposes. So they raised it, dug out, new foundation, used the existing building, but had exponentially more space within, and created a duplex and stratified it. It took them, I think it was 7 years all in to stratify. So, but the two families went in on it and did it together and risked the amount of time it took to become stratified. But now it is two full family dwellings in what used to be a single family dwelling. Doesn't piss off anybody in the neighborhood.
What a
Next door,
concept.
the next door neighbors actually built a multi-unit that looks like a single family dwelling. Like, it seems like there needs to be incentive for people to do what I live in. I live in one of 6 units that are not stratified. Well, it's a non-conforming strata. So it's like 6 units that are 1,600 square feet that don't share walls. We just share a beam that runs across a courtyard. So I have a duplex neighbor who we share envelope insurance together, but we're not strata. I can paint my house pink with purple polka dots if I want, and they can go
I've seen
banana
those.
yellow, and it doesn't matter. Exactly. Well, it's the cheapest paint, right? I'll take the off cast. But this used to be one huge house on a massive lot. And back in the 80s, there was an architect and a builder who worked really diligently to create what is now, if you drove by my neighborhood, you would not think for a second that this wasn't always here. It looks like house, but it has
Gentle density.
six families who feel
And that's a big
independent of
unit.
one another. It's a
1,600.
big, it's a
That's
big
for
unit.
Vancouver. That's big enough to raise a family, and that's a lot bigger than
It's
my
kind of
home.
like living in a space shuttle, but that's okay. But the fact of
Yeah.
the matter is I would not be able to own this if there was a strata fee associated with it that was 5, 6, 7, whatever. Plus, what happened.
Well,
I've got
don't get me
friends who
started
have
on
been
that.
assessed. I know, but
The
it's just
province
like,
keeps
where.
adding these regulations that strata fees are just strata going through the roof.
So who has to change
Stratosphere.
the charter? Like the Vancouver charter, can it be radically changed without
Well, the
blowing it up,
problem.
or what's the downside of blowing it up?
Well, the guy, the as cities, as you know, work to the pleasure of the province. We are an appendage of the province, and
Right.
it comes down to what the province wants to do, and if they want to change, if they want to take that gamble, and frankly, I'm not sure if NDP would, because they have so many seats in Vancouver, and that might have an impact on their voters, and a
Right.
lot of those voters are in areas where they're homeowners. If whether they want to go there, it's not. Is it that bad?
Coming back to
it's
the politics.
100%. Yeah, yeah, totally. And
Oh, makes me
decisions
crazy.
by municipal governments related to a lot of issues that aren't in their purview raise the question. We didn't talk about this in advance, but the issue of the park board and governance with First Nations came up this week at park board, and they're
Yes, it
moving
did.
forward with this concept. But in fact, municipal governments are not necessarily required to have a role in any kind of relationship with First Nations. This is very a gray area for sure, but generally First Nations relationships and land is a relationship between the federal and provincial governments, not municipal governments. So
Right.
what is the point of the park board pursuing this more than just politics, really? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing that they're
Politics.
looking at
Yeah.
this. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that is it really about governance, or is it about politics? Given the way that works, governmentally, this is a conversation that the federal and provincial government should be having, not a municipal government being the park board. So these are, what is the role of a municipality and roles and responsibilities, and the charter, it clarifies that, but it also reminds you that the province can change it. We work at the pleasure of the province. The city is an appendage of the province
Yeah.
via the constitution of our country, and so, but there's no appetite for NDP to go down that road for sure. There's no way.
But David Eby, I mean, he's definitely
Touching on it, yeah,
getting in the mix of things when it comes to housing, because certainly,
yeah,
and he has been at the forefront of the issues around housing since the start of his career when it comes to being part of the human rights of the affordability crisis. Anyways, we
yeah.
could
And that
go.
would
We
be
could
he
go
looking at doing it not only in Vancouver, but that would be across all the province,
provincial.
revoking
Yes.
certain powers and mandating city governments to start building faster in whatever way that is, and whatever magical way that is. Because of course, it's all about bureaucracy, and if you can't manage the bureaucracy, and if you have a council that keeps throwing, as this one does in Vancouver, more stuff on top of staff on top of them, and that you just
Without
add more
getting anything actually
bureaucracy.
done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing gets accomplished.
And then it's sparkly things ahead of Election Day, which, by the way, I
Yes.
like to reiterate each and every week here on the UnSpun podcast, October 15th, 2022, George Affleck's birthday, and also the day you will go to the polls in your municipality. And George, now is a good time to say how to follow you on Twitter. You're at George
Underscore. Whoosh.
Affleck, and I'm at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, Vance. That's a big underscore, man.
That's a long one.
You're going to the orca.ca. You're signing up for the Fin, which I love the Fin. It's a great resource. I honestly, no word of a lie, read the Fin first every morning to make sure that I'm up to date on what I need to read, what I need to be focused in on. And you'll find my column pops up on the Fin on Thursdays. My middle drops on Wednesdays. This week, it was about sort of looking at the kids in COVID. I'm looking at the kids around me, and more so sort of the 10-year-old to 15, 16-year-old set are the ones that I'm
Yeah.
most in my universe. And when I'm stressed out and looking at the news cycle and finding myself just in a
But
washing
yes,
machine of chaos. And then I look at the kids, I'm like, wow, the kids are all right. Like they're figuring it out.
kids, all right. Let's play that.
Kids
Put
are
it
all
out,
right.
one on boys. Where's that
Put it
song?
on, bud.
It's true. And my kids, I've got 25, 20, and 13, living their lives in each way differently, but kind of this is the new normal. They live their lives. And you look at, you've got the truckers in Ottawa,
Let's talk
protesting.
about that.
We're at 90% in this country. And you got Denmark and England going, we're done. We're moving on now. The truckers, I had a few people come at me on in Facebook, my messenger, old friends from high school asking me to get behind the truckers. And I'm like, I don't get this one.
I'm going to get
Freedom.
behind the
It's very
healthcare
American.
workers.
It's very American.
The convoy I'm following are the ones that are continually going into work in hospitals across this country. That's my convoy. Those are the people I'm going to get behind. And the people that are like all about the truckers, and my right to my freedom of not being vaccinated. you're not going to be able to go to the United States because Joe Biden doesn't want you in the United States if you're not fully vaccinated. So I mean, that part of it is really something. And that 10% of truckers who are not vaccinated, because let's just get this on for the record, 90% of truckers in Canada and all of the trucking alliances are on board with vaccinations. Some companies have been paying their truckers $25,000 to $10,000, $2,500 to $10,000 to be vaccinated as incentives. Really? Like, they are on, because it's the supply chain is not going to be impacted by 10% of truckers protesting. The supply chain is going to be impacted by absenteeism due to COVID-19. Get your vaccine, protect yourself, stay out of the hospital. Let's pull together. Let's focus on COVAX and get the rest. Let's get the rest of the world vaccinated so we don't have another variant rolling into town. Like, let's stop worrying.
I'll tell you, that's something to remember. I had a friend, she lives outside of Canada in a country that's not even close to, they don't have the access. And she woke up this morning and she has not been vaccinated, not because she doesn't want to, because she can't, because they don't have it yet. And it reminded me how lucky we are to live in Canada where we can get the vaccine. And here she has probably COVID and who knows what variant. And, it's worrying. You go, oh my God, you're not vaccinated. Yeah, no, I'd like to be, but
I can't get it.
Can't get it yet.
And for people that, please don't hang your Canadian flag upside down. That's not who we are. That's not who we are. It makes me a little bit nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And just a little bit. Anyways, George, the next time we'll reconvene and talk about what might have or have not happened in Ottawa. Of course, we tape the podcast on Thursday.
Prime Minister, maybe in isolation.
He's isolating. Yeah.
It seems over the top, but okay.
Seems a little.
He random. I mean, he's tested negative. I thought the rules must be different in Ontario, I guess, because here he would be allowed to
continue on. You monitor. You would just monitor yourself for symptoms. If you're even if you live together and you have a close contact, you just monitor for symptoms, wear a mask, be responsible, stay away from people who are immunocompromised. If you have symptoms, you stay isolated and assume you have it, stay isolated for at least 5 days, longer if your symptoms persist. This is not hard. This is our new normal.
Maybe the Prime Minister doesn't want to meet with the truckers.
Probably. We'll talk that through next week, George. Say goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye.